back in my office, surrounded by Dad's artifacts, looking at the surface layer of our dig, my own memories. This is the layer I thought I knew best. But digging through everything underneath has completely changed how I see these moments. The Dad I knew as his daughter was shaped by all those buried layers. The beloved boy, the rejections, the marriage silencing. But he was also something more. A man who found ways to be joyful and mischievous, despite everything the world had tried to take from him. Picture this. 2 teenage sisters sunbathing on the roof of our house. Anne-Marie and I are completely absorbed in our own thoughts. Baking in the heat of the sun, totally unaware of the impending blast of cold. Suddenly we're soaked. Dad has grabbed the garden hose and is aiming it directly at us from the yard below, that mischievous chuckle giving him away completely. We're screaming, half furious, half delighted, while Dad continues his surprise attack until we scramble down from the roof, dripping wet and laughing despite ourselves. This was Dad's love language, playful antagonism that made us feel noticed and cherished. Dad was the absolute king of gentle torment. He'd flick Mom's ear when she was reading or pinch my arm when I least expected it, grab my toes while I was splayed out on the couch, absorbed in a book. That ornery smile, full of mischief, would give him away every time. His humor was physical, immediate, rooted in presence rather than words. The same enormous hands that crafted furniture were also instruments of playfulness. They could fix anything, comfort us kids, or surprise us with unexpected affection. One memory that stands out captures Dad perfectly out of his element. When my sister was getting married, Dad took me to try on a dress at Boyd's department store in Buffalo. He literally put it on me upside down first, then backwards, while the store ladies were dying with laughter. His muscled hands, fumbling with tiny buttons and delicate fabric, completely confused by girls' clothing mechanics, but showing up anyway because being present mattered more than being competent. My most treasured memories are the bedtime stories. While television was forbidden, Dad created something far more intimate. I remember sitting on his lap for hours, my ear pressed against his chest, listening to the gruff vibrato of his voice as he read Uncle Remus tales. His speech difficulties that others mocked became simply the unique sound of my father's love. I never had trouble understanding him. In our family, Dad's voice was clear, his presence essential, his love unmistakable. These weren't hurried routines. Dad, home from driving all day, would settle into his chair with infinite patience and read for as long as I wanted to listen. One time, Dad carried me through the falling snow from the house to the barn in the early morning light. Inside the warm barn, lit by a single bulb, Dad showed me something precious. A baby calf just born, still wobbly, with its mother standing protectively nearby. We sat on a hay bale, and Dad let me name it. I chose Knobby because it had a small lump on its head, some quirk that made it special, different, or marked. Dad, who had been marked as different from birth, was introducing me to another creature that bore its own unique mark. He was teaching me that difference could be interesting rather than shameful, that I had the power to give something identity. Some of my clearest memories come from our cross-country road trips to Washington State. I'd sit between Mom and Dad, reading maps while Dad explained geography. "That's where Lewis and Clark crossed," he'd tell me. On the CB radio, we'd listen in on trucker conversations. We'd try to make trucks honk by making the bicep sign. Dad, with his trucking background, understood this brotherhood and taught us the language of highway communication. Sometimes Dad would let me sit on his lap and steer through empty landscape. I was pretending to be in control, but Dad's hands were always ready to correct course. This balance between freedom and security defined his entire approach to fatherhood. If these intimate stories of fathers who loved sideways, through water hose attacks and bedtime stories, through practical care rather than flowery words, speak to your own family experience. You'll find more stories like this in my Substack newsletter, Things I Meant to Tell You. It's where I write about the courage it takes to really see our parents as complete human beings. Years later, when Dad was in his 90s, I asked about his regrets. Without hesitation, not graduating high school, he said. The pain in his voice was unmistakable. After decades of achievement, he still carried that wound. Here was a man who had taught himself American history, who could navigate every Minnesota road, who had built furniture lasting generations, who had driven 1,000,000 miles without accident. And he still felt diminished by circumstances completely beyond his 14-year-old self's control. I tried to convince him that it was never too late, but he just smiled, patted my hands, and went back to his book. What I'm realizing about these surface memories is that Dad operated on a frequency many people couldn't tune into. His love was quiet, but constant. His humor was more physical than verbal. His care was practical, rather than demonstrative. The water hose attacks, the gentle teasing, the road trip adventures, the bedtime stories, the handcrafted furniture, these were all expressions of the same thing, a man who had learned to love sideways, to express affection through action when words felt insufficient. People who didn't know how to read Dad's frequency might have seen him as distant, but to those of us who were tuned in, his love was unmistakable and constant. But I have to be honest about Dad's limitations, too. His instinct to avoid conflict sometimes meant failing to intervene when intervention was needed. When tensions arose between us kids and Mom, Dad would enter and say, "That's enough now," ending immediate conflict, but not addressing underlying problems. Sometimes a child's need for protection required more than peacekeeping. The same gentleness that made him such a patient father also made him less protective when protection required confrontation. Dad had learned survival through accommodation, strategies that served him well, but sometimes failed when family dynamics required assertive action. As I sit here, surrounded by Dad's artifacts, I can see how the surface layer connects to all the deeper strata. The playful antagonist was the same boy beloved by classmates. The practical lover was the man who learned actions spoke louder than words. The gentle father was the person who chose tenderness despite experiencing cruelty. The dad I knew was shaped by everything that came before, but he was also uniquely himself. Ornery, gentle, present, and loving in his own particular way. What I'm understanding from these surface findings is that Dad wasn't unseen because he chose to be. He learned to express himself in ways that felt safe, after a lifetime of learning his obvious expressions weren't welcome. But for those who knew how to look, who could read his particular frequency, Dad was fully present, fully loving, and fully himself. Next week, in our final episode, we'll put together everything we've uncovered. We'll see the complete picture of who Roy Scoop really was. Not just the roles he played, but the full human being who lived beneath and within them all.